Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. So people are still logging in, so just wait a little bit. And before we start the webinar, we'll just have a little word in Spanish for our Spanish audience because they will need some translation services. So I'll start in a sec. Okay, let's go. So, buenas tardes a todos. Soy Luis Gro y antes que Judith empiece a presentar el webinar, que será en inglés, queremos que sepan que pueden optar por disfrutar de los servicios de interpretación inglés-español disponible haciendo un clic en el siguiente icono en algún lugar para ahí y eligiendo el idioma que desean escuchar. Okay, so now we switch back to English, and I let the floor to Judith.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So before we get started, please be aware that this session is being recorded. So my name is Judith Boer, and together with Louis Gros, on behalf of the SCTA Next Gen Council, we would like to welcome you to today's webinar, What Happened in the Latin American Washed Arabica Crops. We have four very interesting speakers who will tell you more about what's happening in the region, why did it take so many by surprise, are the local differences, and what can we expect to come? Questions can be asked via the Q&A, and now I would like to hand over to Louis to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Judith. So our first speaker, Mariano Vargas, very much into the next gen, but already has 18 years of experience in coffee farming. He comes from Costa Rica. He's the Chief Operation Officer from La Hilda estate, and his family have been working in coffee farming for now 4 generations, and is taking over now. He's also an agronomist and engineer for the Technological Institute of Costa Rica. So thank you very much, Mariano, for providing us your perspective now.
Thanks, Lloyd. Thanks, Judith. Thanks for having me. First of all, again, I'm a member of the 4th generation of coffee family here in Costa Rica. We've been producing coffee for almost 100 years, and also processing for 63 years, roasting for 30 algaes, and exporting directly for 25 years. So we've been spend a lot of time in the ground. We've been spend a lot of time with the industry, and we work pretty close from small producers of the neighborhood and thousands of pickers here in Costa Rica. But we are also suffering the impacts of climate change like everyone else. So thanks for the invitation and trying to explain a little bit a current context of climate change, or the impacts, or the multiple and negative impacts of climate change on the coffee farms, especially. Well, first of all, we must know that the showing or the evidence of climate change itself in Central America is totally different than in another place in the world. I'm not saying that in the tropic is impact a little bit more than other places, but the level and the complexity of the effects of climate change is pretty different. So the interpretation of what is climate change in different parts of the world is very important, must in a global value chain like coffee. And this is one of the challenges that we have like an industry, trying to leverage the definitions or basic concepts like climate change. And give you an example. For example, sustainability for a producer maybe is an eco label or voluntary sustainable scheme, but maybe for the final consumer, the sustainability is other kind of things. So the interpretation is very important through the different steps of the value chain in coffee industry. I will expand a little bit more. Central America is located in the narrowest part of the continent, between two continental blocks, North America and South America. From Chiapas, Mexico to Boquete, Panama, the influence that both oceans have in the environment of the places that we are producing coffee is absolutely enormous and unpredictable. Just imagine that our climate is, we are like an island. We have the influence of both oceans is totally enormous. So it's not the same, the effects of climate change in an island than in the continental weather, like Brazil or like any agriculture in the center of the United States, for example. To make a comparison, Central America is half as wide and twice as long than Italian peninsula. Half as wide, twice as long. So the effects of both oceans, guys, is, well, is amazing. So technically, this tiny and fragile piece of land, we could consider ourselves like one of the most vulnerable hotspots for climate change in the world, I guess. So having said that, we have two immediately we have two effects. First, to the economy. The climate change has directly affected the agriculture in the region, mainly in the region that we call dry corridor, that run through Honduras, Guatemala, Salvador, and a little piece of land in Nicaragua. This region is populated mostly by small producers, small-scale producers of different agricultures, maize, grain crops, and also coffee. And is creating an outstanding problem of scarcity, food scarcity, and poverty. And so consequently, the productive problem has generated a huge social problem here. It's causing a mass exodus of thousands of families, group of people, most of them smallholders, farmers, and portion of this group are young farmers, is going to United States walking. Thousands of miles walking to United States. Most of them young farmers, most of them pickers who help to the harvest of coffee in the region. So I'm talking about 2 million of climate migrants. Maybe it's the greatest wave of global migration the world has seen so far. So this is what we are living right now for climate change. It's not only the productive and the economic issues, is consequently and immediately is causing a bunch of social crisis here. So I guess that in this case, we're talking about real facts, real people with real needs, just like us, with families, close friends, with dreams, but they are taking their few things, put it in their bags, and take this trip and take this decision. So yeah, this is the things that is happening, effects from climate change in the region. But this is not a bad news webinar, right? Maybe I'm going to talk about what we are doing here, especially in the region, what we are trying to do to avoid all those effects in coffee production, especially in trying to make this activity profitable and attractive again, especially to the next generation or the current generation as well. Our work is focusing on two aspects here. First, the mitigation actions, that is the reduction of emission through through the way of management of the farms, especially in the reduction of chemical fertilizers on the farm. And finally, we are working with adaptation actions, that is basically the execution of authentic regenerative agriculture based on carbon economy. And here comes the best. After studying a lot about regenerative agriculture and all about the carbon cycle, we realized that the coffee is a strategic crop for nature-based solution for global warming. There are a few tropical crops in the world, maybe 3 or 4, intensive agroforestry systems, cocoa, bamboo, and coffee, that has the ability to sequester carbon while producing and conserving the local ecosystem. So this is very, very important, and not only for the industry. I mean, this is very important worldwide, trying to take decisions on this kind of projects. We're talking about a crop that is perennial, is woody, allows shade, allows cover crops. Maybe one of the best things is in the hands of thousands of small farmers. So the impact that we have the opportunity to make to the community of producers is really is amazing, huh? So here's our propose or our deal, our new deal to the industry or to the clients. We really want to transform our coffee farms into a carbon farms, which not only produce coffee but also carbon sequestration services. We want to sell service like Microsoft, like Google, like the mother companies that not only produce coffee or wood or other kind of goods. Yeah, we really want to sell services, local services to the local ecosystems, and mitigate the climate crisis, not only of the local ecosystems. I mean, we are talking about a climate solution from the origin. No? Just as we have been leaders in sustainability issues, in the implementation of voluntary sustainability schemes, many industries always has been influenced by coffee industry for the way that we treat the sustainability and the way that we move all this capital to the origins to trying to make this sustainable. We must be leaders in carbon distribution in coffee chains. As we been early adopters in these sustainability standards schemes, we really want to, we really need to do something with the carbon economy and trying to not want to be a net zero company. We want to be a net zero industry or net zero coffee chains in the future. Just for finish, I guess that our threat that we have in coffee industry today maybe is not climate change, is not gender equity, is not force and child labor, is not price, is not economy, is not profitability. Maybe the most pressing threat we have in coffee industry is the widening gap between the farm and the final consumer, and we are in the middle, guys. Now we are here. We are in the middle. So our generation, the current generation, has the greatest opportunity and perhaps the last one. We need to create conversations like this. We need to create knowledge, community, common efforts, common goals, create simple solutions to complex problems with this kind of initiatives. And that's it, Loic. That's my participation.
Thanks a lot, Mariano. And yeah, well said. We'll keep in mind that we should continue with this communication, and we already have some questions that will come for you at the end in this regard. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so now we go on with our second speaker, Daniel Gerber, who is General Manager of SOGIMEX. in Honduras. So SOGIMEX has been focusing on sustainable supply chain management since 2004. So they were the first one to obtain the UT certification in Honduras in 2006, and has implemented sustainability project together with the industry and NGO since 2008. So, and they even received a sustainability award in 2008 for that. So now I let the floor to Daniel, who will go on with a presentation about ECOM Honduras. Please go on. All right, Daniel, I think we cannot hear you. Did we lose Daniel? Let me just check.
I think we just lost him. Otherwise, we just move on.
Okay.
Andres, and then we get back to Daniel.
Exactly. So we'll do that. So Andres, I think you're ready to go on, and we'll go back to Daniel afterwards. So Andres, commercial manager of Sucden Coffee in Colombia, has been working in the coffee industry for the last 11 years, started in Mexico, and I've been working in the food and the feed industry across LATAM for the last 12 years. So now Andres is currently responsible for managing Sucden Colombia commercial department and also their sustainable project. And he will go on with his presentation. Thank you very much, Andres.
Thank you, Loic, and thank you everyone for joining. So the question here is, what happened to the Latin American Washed Arabica crops? I think, next slide, please. So we can say that the main two issues impacting Latin American productions are weather and price. First, weather, and most recently impacted by La Niña in the region, in Colombia. And I think everybody is well aware of the Colombia crop reduction over the past years. 2 crops ago, everybody was expecting a bigger crop, and then we saw several adjustments during the last months. We have similar situation for the upcoming crop. Let's say everybody is expecting a decent one, but maybe it's too soon to tell. So we just need to wait a little bit to be sure what to expect. And all this mainly because during 2022 here in Colombia, the weather has been rainy for most of the year, and this has resulted in late and scarce flowering periods. On the other side, past weeks, so the weather has been improving, and with less rains and more sunny days, we can expect better flowering during next weeks, mainly in September. So we can say that weather is hard to forecast, and it has a huge impact for the Latin America Washed Arabica crops. Second factor, we can say, is the price. So we can say that a reduced production implies a reduced profitability. Price rallies like the one in 2014 and maybe the one in 2021, last year, support increase in output in countries like Honduras and other Latin America countries. But on the other side, falling prices between 2017 and 2021 brought production lower. And for example, similar to the Colombian crop production, everybody was expecting a bigger crop in Honduras. And then we saw the reality with a big decrease from last crop to current crop. So we can conclude, or we can say that less production means less profit. So going back to Colombia, let's see this graph below showing the impact in La Niña in Colombia. Brown line shows on index. So the index tracks the running 3-month average sea surface temperatures and tell us if we are in El Niño above 0.5, neutral between 0.5 and minus 0.5, or La Niña below 0.5. And the blue line shows the difference in Colombian production expected compared to realized. So for the last couple of years, we can see the index correlates with reduced production here in Colombia. and we can conclude Colombia lost a few million bags over the last years on La Nina. What's the outlook for the next months? So we can say that the expectation is that weather, the normal conditions would continue at least until early next year, but we will dig into this later. Next slide, please. So going back to the region and to the miles, we can say that it's a fact that the price reaction in miles has been muted by high and firm differentials over the last months, and especially with coffees that have hard demand, like the Colombian coffees, reaching record high prices in the last years. We know differentials hold an inverse relationship to futures prices, but in the case of Colombian coffees, this didn't happen over the past months, with New York up and differentials up too. On the other side, countries like Honduras and Latin American origins, let's say more conventional, more mainstream coffees that compete with Brazil, for example, have suffered due to the low price environment I mentioned before. So below you can see in this graph the export of Honduras and the New York flat price over the last 10 years. And price rally of 2014, you can see that support increase in the output and of course in the exports of the Honduras coffee. But on the other side, falling prices between 2017 and 2021 brought production lower. And we can think prices may support some increase in production, but we can doubt about this given high production costs in the past months and in the next months. Next slide, please. Finally, so what can we expect during the next months? Let's focus again in weather and price. As I mentioned before, weather is very hard to forecast. And in this example, we can say that La Nina is expected to continue until Jan 23, as we can see in the graph right. So we can say further output reduction could happen in the next months. But it's true that La Nina will eventually go away, but it may still be here during Q1, impacting 23 and 24 crops. So we just should keep an eye on this. In conclusion, weather in worldwide and the region, in a specific region for these coffee producing countries, is getting more violent and more unpredictable, not only in Colombia, but not only in coffee, but other products too. We can say, or we can expect this to continue to get worse. This is a clear trend in our business. And then, on the other hand, as we just saw, price, of course, is also an important component to watch, as this has a strong relationship and tells about the future of production in coffee. Price is not the only point to consider. The input cost and of course profitability are very important for the farmer. And a good example right now, as Mariano mentioned, fertilizers prices are getting expensive. Were expensive and are getting more expensive during the upcoming months. Currently, fertilizer prices have far exceeded the increase in coffee. So we can see in the graph below, you can see coffee, Arabica, and urea price changes over 20 years, showing how much it has changed starting Jan 2000. So in this case for urea, we see that at peak, let's say in the last peak, that's around mid-June, July 2021, price was 12 times as high against Jan 2000 when coffee is double the price. So to keep it simple and focusing in Colombia, a metric ton of urea in 2020 was around $550 per metric ton. But by the next year, by mid-2021, the price of the same metric ton of urea increased to $750 per metric ton. That's 30% up compared to previous year. And by mid-2022, we saw a big increase again, so reaching close to $1,000 per metric ton. So that's 40% compared to previous one and 80% compared to 2020. And we think, or I think, we can expect prices to keep increasing, and it will depend on the exchange rate. It also will depend on the exchange rate. With a weaker Colombian peso, it's important to keep an eye on the Colombian peso. And finally, a couple of things to consider. So for the we know and we saw in Colombia that for the pre-harvest period, the fertilizer, not only urea, other fertilizers, the prices were high for the preparation period. And in some regions with less productivity and despite high prices, some farmers have started decreasing the fertilizer usage. So quality and yields could be affected for the coming crops, and together with unexpected weather conditions, it will be hard to predict. So I think it's very, very important to keep an eye on inputs, weather condition, weather forecast, and of course, production cost. And that's all from my side.
Okay, thank you, Andres. And obviously, high prices doesn't especially mean high revenue for origin. So now Daniel is back. So I already introduced him, and I will let the floor to him to continue this webinar.
Thank you very much, and good morning from Honduras. Thank you to the Swiss Coffee Trade Association NextGen for the invitation to present our view of the situation of coffee production in Honduras. The first slide, please. In order to understand what happened this year, allow me to start with a broad view of the past 10 crops. The crop volumes were starting to increase substantially in the years prior to 12-13, with over 6 million bags in 11-12. But the coffee rust fungus Roya slowed the continuation of the growth in 12-13, affecting the output by 34%. Nevertheless, the recovery was fast and strong, over 80% volume increase during the following years to get to over 7 million bags during 3 years in a row, from 16-17 through 18-19. After a period of 7 years of over 5 million bags, whereof 3 crops over 7 million bags, a correction of 37% started in 1920 until the present crop. Worth to mention that the 20% drop from 18-19 to 1920 was partly due to the pandemic year 2020, where we had a lockdown since March. During the high productive years, there was no need for renovation as trees were in top shape, and there was no investment in new production done due to low price period. For the upcoming 2 crop cycles, we are cautiously positive, largely due to the very high prices we currently have. They are doing their job, so to say. So for the time being, we are forecasting a small increase of 10% for the next 2 crop cycles. Next slide, please. The crop reduction factors that influenced the reduction of the current crop by probably 25%. The final number is to be confirmed by the ICAFE by end of September. We believe we have to analyze 2 subjects. One is the agricultural point of view, and the other one is the social issue, which is the same as Mariano spoke about. Let's start with the agriculture issue. After having such high productivity during 8 to 9 years, the natural productive cycle of the tree is ending. There were neither renovations nor new plantings going on due to the low prices period of 5 to 6 years before this year. Trees are aging. Now 86% are between 7 and 9 years old. 6% are already 10 years old, and only 7% are considered young with 5 years of age or less. Some logistical difficulties during the pandemic year of 2020, and even some during 2021, resulted in a kind of lower farm maintenance and lower input affecting the production. The impact of partial and total farm abandonment due to migration, this is the social issue which I will address in a moment, has been underestimated. Next slide, please. The challenges the producer is facing for next crop and beyond. The cost of production for farm gate of a good farm with 20 bags of 60 kilo per hectare production has increased 46%. From $94 last year to $137 per green, 46 green during the first months of 2022. This likely have to be adjusted, probably increased by end of 2022. The cost of production for the farmer is composed by labor maintenance of $25, labor harvesting $47, agriculture inputs of $36, administrative cost interest $24, and the milling, wet and dry of $5. I would like to highlight here that 52% of the cost of production for the farm gate is related to labor. Labor is crucial for production, coffee production in Honduras. From farm gate to FOB, we have to add $26.75 for logistics, 20 the export cost, and $2.75 for export permit. That brings us this year to a cost of production of $163.75 during the first month of this year, which again probably will be have to adjust and revised and probably increased by end of this year. 163.75 per 46 green. Next slide, please. The challenges continue with the huge challenge to recover the lost productivity. We had the whole coffee production is based on 270,000 hectares. During the last crop cycles, we had 26 bags of 60 kilo per hectare in productivity. It's now down to 18 bags per hectare only. We estimate that this year nurseries for up to 10 million new plants have been attended in order to renovate 2,500 hectares, representing only 1% of the whole production area. And the fertilizer topic, no, we have low fertilization. Fertilizer sales are down 30% versus last year due to the price increase from 28 per bag to up to $57 per bag. We estimate that only 20% of the producers will apply a full doses of 1 to 4 doses, but the vast majority are to apply only 1 dose and maybe 2 doses of fertilization. So we don't have a complete fertilization this year. Next slide, please. The distribution by producer size. I just would like to show you the production distribution. This for channel information purpose. We have 96,000 farmers producing a crop of 5 million bags of 60 kilos. The majority, 67,000 farmers or 70% are smallholders with maximum 2 hectares or less, producing 1.7 million bags or 34% of the production. 25%, 24,000 producers have 2 to 7 hectares and produce 1.8 million bags, 36% of the production. and only 5% or 5,000 producers are considered large, with more than 7 hectares producing 1.5 million bags and 30% of the production. This is just to give you an idea of the production constellation. Next slide, please. The challenge continuing. First of all, we have a very strong local currency versus the US dollar, with a devaluation of less than 1% last year. And as per July 31st this year, it's the same, below 1%, 0.8%. And I come to the social issue, which we call remittances migration. And just a few figures to put the numbers in a perspective regarding the massive remittances. The Honduras GDP last year was 28 billion. The crop last year produced 1.2 billion. This year, by end of August, 1.4 billion. Remittances in 21 were up 24% versus 2020 to 7.15 billion. This year, the estimates they are up again 19% to reach 8.5 billion. The remittances today represent about 26% of the total GDP. Next slide, please. I show you the total of remittances, as it is very difficult to put an exact number of people behind the migration. It is by far illegal after all. But the increase of remittances is a way to show the massive amount of people sending money back to their families. Remittances over the past 10 years increased every year, 199% up for 10 years and 54% up for the last 3 years only, to get to $8.5 billion this year. This makes $700 million per month. The figure shows the massive trend created by Hondurans living abroad, the vast majority in the USA, and sending money back to their families. Remittances are affecting coffee production twice. First, they are created by migrated labor force who are being missed at home. And second, they are benefiting the families at home to an extent that they don't need to work anymore. The trend is ongoing, and we have no idea when it could start ending. And the last slide. I thank you very much, and I'm glad to respond to any question you might have. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Daniel, for this deep, detailed presentation. I think it's very, very, very insightful. Now we go on with Thibaut Procacci, who is the Director of Trade at Touton. So Touton is a French leading global trader. Thibaut started at the research desk over 10 years ago and built his expertise of the coffee and cocoa sectors, and then moved on to the physical trading. So Thibaut and his team of experts have progressively assembled a vast and reliable network of subsidiary at origin and partner to master a wide range of Robusta and Arabica supply chain worldwide. So Thibaut, your turn.
Thank you very much, Loic, and thank you very much to the SCT and NextGen for the invitation. Sorry. So and thanks Mariano, Andres, and Daniel for their very insightful presentations and comments. I will try to have an approach which is a bit more global than those several micro local situations explained by my three colleagues. So next slide, please. So first, we're going to start with the global S&D pictures. Then after, as we were discussing, and as it's the topic to this webinar, we will take two examples of difficulties to forecast crops. So Brazil ones and Colombia. And at the end of these short presentations, we will focus on washed Arabica S&D. So next slide, please, and next slide, please. I think it's the previous one, but it's going to be all right. So yes, So here is a global coffee S&D situation, and Arabica balance sheet will be discussed. So I think the crop situation that we're living in is well summarized here. We see that we have a massive surplus in 2021, then a massive deficit in 21-22, and then for 22-23, so now we are once again, unfortunately, forecasting a deficit. So if we have a look at the 21-22, so basically the crop year we're living on and in, which is finishing, let's say, that put us on a deficit of 7.5 million bags of deficit in Arabica. So basically, where did it come from? Of course, a short crop in Brazil, and then a very difficult and tight crop in Washed Arabican country, and namely Honduras and Colombia. So Colombia at 11.5 and Honduras ending at 5. So Daniel was a bit lower, but he's the expert, so it might be lower. I think if we had a look at what we had in our S&D like 1 year ago, we would be far from those numbers. So that's a little bit for this global picture. And we see for 22-23 that unfortunately there is no relief yet around the corner, as we so now what we forecast is that we're again in deficit. Next slide, please. Next and next slide again, sorry. Yes, thank you. So I think it's been explained by Mariano as well and everybody before. What we have lived on in regards to coffee crop developments there in the last 3 years have been very unique. So forecasting crops has been very tricky. So I took 2 cases, let's say case study, which are for us and for me quite telling. So next slide, please. And next slide. Let's check on the graph. Perfect. So the 21-22 crop, so the one which is finished already in Brazil as we're starting 22-23, has been quite interesting in a crop forecasting perspective. So the first graph here is Sul de Minas. So what we lived at the beginning of the season was very erratic rains. So it's been very difficult and tricky to assess impacts on botanical production. I think this graph is quite telling. We had quite a good months of October and September, even if it's not that meaningful. And then bad October, bad November, as we see that November was at the bottom end of the range. Then a December, which was a very big month in terms of rainfall volume. And then when you look at the situation that we lived in late 2020, so we had difficulties to understand if the damage was already done, despite the fact that the total, let's say, volume of rains was somewhat not that far away from long-term average. Then we had as well a very unique event in terms of temperatures, because whether in Sul de Minas or in Cerrado after, we had temperatures which were close to 35 and 40 degrees. And as we see on the right-hand graph there for the temperatures, we systematically were at the high-end range of the long-term averages there. So if you go to the next slide, it's quite the same in Cerrado, especially in terms of temperatures. We basically witnessed a couple of max temperatures during, let's say, the Q4 2020, close to 2021, sorry, close to 40 degrees. So that makes it very difficult to assess directly and straightly the impact on botanics there, because of course it's extreme events. We don't have a lot of years which are comparable, and of course we guessed, but we don't really sure about the impacts on pollination and crop development. So that's what makes it very difficult: climate change and very excessive, I think, weather events. Next slide, please. Another, of course, central events right now has been Colombia, and has been really well explained by Andres, sorry, is the situation that we face in Colombia. So just a small chart, which I think is interesting to look at. So the Antioquia cumulative rainfalls for 2022. We started, let's say, the beginning of 2022, probably, and when I say we, I mean the market consensus, probably with a figure expected, maybe too optimistic for 2023, around 13.5 million bags for 22-23 Colombian crop. Now, throughout the season, we've seen that indeed La Nina provoked massive rainfalls, and that this chart is telling in a sense that the graph line is way above the 10-year long-term average. So it's been probably something like 500 millimeters above the long-term average, which of course creates complete unique scenario. Now, I think the market is working on pretty low numbers, unfortunately. 21-22 around 11.5, and 22-23 around 12 million. I think the market adjusted now lower their Mitaka crop number given the rains that there was. Let's monitor this as Andres very well said. So next slide, please, Sarah, and next slide again. So if I next slide, please. If I can summarize a bit the different discussion and summarize a bit these webinar topics. So how did we get there? I think, and excuse me, I need of course to simplify and popularize a little bit the topics. So how did we get there? Of course, as it was well expressed before, we lived a very long period of low market prices, 3-4 years, 2017, 2020, and we know that, of course, it badly hurt production due to costs and husbandry. Then, right after, we lived the pandemic, okay? Of course, predicting a pandemic and its impacts is quite impossible. It was all new for everybody. And at the end of the day, it was a very difficult situation where growers haven't been able, of course, to save any money during the past years. Adding to that, I think the weather events have been completely unique during those past years. We remember in late 2020, the exceptional hurricanes that were passing by across the region in Honduras, Nicaragua, Salvador. In Salvador and Nicaragua recently as well, we lived like long periods of massive rainfalls when it was not really needed, and then long periods with no rains. And in Colombia, we said it with a very high level of rainfalls. Then after, as expressed by Daniel, is at the center of these situations. There is a big problem with workers leaving the countries, like in Honduras. In Salvador, despite the programs to prevent migration, it's similar. And in Nicaragua, there is other maybe difficulties with workers preferring to migrate to go to Honduras, Costa Rica for better income. So, adding to that, we had labor costs rocketing, of course, with the COVID period, cost of living, and now inflation and fear of recessions. The impact, I think, on crop are clear, fertilization were poor. And one thing that it is difficult to assess and might as well make the visibility of the crops, or the one we have, a bit blurry, is the way the farmers are protecting themselves against inflation. So what can we expect now? I think 22-23, as we said, we probably will be in deficit. Right now, as they are, production are too low to sustain demands. Our main case scenario is that demand will need to be destructed, most probably by a higher market. Now, what's of course changing right now is the impacts of macroeconomics. And when I say macro, it's larger. So the thing is that when we see the sustained, let's say, hawkish as well Fed policy that there is right now, the impact on the economy and investment that there can be, it's not a done deal that the market will be able to go higher and demand sustain. I think there is a big risk to that. Now, of course, the big question is, can the demand stay high in these contexts? In 23-24, we frankly hope, of course, that the high prices that we lived the past crop will benefit to the farmer and lead to higher production. We've seen that Daniel and SOGIMEX, you expect 5.8 for 23-24 crop. Let's hope for it. Next slide. I just wanted to come back on this because, of course, it was a terrible impact and a setup, of course, for this cocktail of events, which was the low prices. I think it's quite telling, this period of low prices that induced a reduction in Latin American crop. Next slide, please. Next, sorry. Yes, thank you. So we've tried to summarize a bit this washed Arabica supply and demand. We see that if we look at the last row on the table, that's the non-Brazil washed Arabica balance sheet. It's been 5 years now that we are in deficit. Not to say we're in a structural deficits. We do believe that this year will end up in a deficit of 1.3 million bags, and next year will be again most probably in deficit despite the decrease in demand we're pricing here. So next slide, and I'll stop with that. I think the unique situations of washed Arabica Latin American crop are well summarized here for the market who knows, of course, how to read these. And it's quite telling to see all those premium of washed Arabicas being in constant increase since like 3-4 years. So I think let's hope that the production in the Central American region and Latin American region as a whole will rebound, so we can get bigger volume and bigger profitability for the farmers here. But indeed, the situation has been really critical. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
So thank you all for sharing your valuable insights. We have a few minutes left for the Q&A. So Andres, a question to you. Climate change is affecting coffee production. We clearly see that in Colombia. Are you seeing more complications in producing more quantity? And how have the new varieties adapted to climate change?
Thank you, Judith. It's a tricky one. So yeah, we are seeing with current prices, of course, it's an incentive, and the farmers are focusing on planting new trees instead of renovations. How much? It's hard to know, to be honest. But yeah, and based on this, we can say that it's fair to expect a increase in output during the next years. But yeah, as I mentioned during the presentation, at the end of the day, this should be profitable for the farmer mainly. And with the fertilizer price increasing, and we expect to continue like this, these guys are looking for alternatives, or even trying to harvest different products like lemon or avocados. On the new or different variations, well, there's a lot of research here in Colombia, and we ourselves, together with a lot of partners, were exploring how these new varieties are will adapt to the Colombian coffee regions. So it's hard to have a good answer on this.
Thank you.
another question for I think Mariano now in this aspect of kind of what is the future of the region for coffee production, and the fact that you also stated the great capacity of the coffee trees to absorb CO2. How do you see the new generation reacting to that? Do you think it could be also a solution to tackle migration and keep people on site? Can you evaluate a bit more?
Yeah, well, added to what I guess Andres was talking, the key of I guess that there's no variety or there's no magic fertilizer. The key is the change of management of the farm. The current weather conditions are highly variable. We call it climate variability because our dry season are not as dry as used to be, and rainy season are not wet as used to be. So that kind of things force us to change the way that produce coffee. In this case, we have implemented something that we call response agriculture, that is basically be aware of current conditions and make management adjustment. The key is the change of management. The difference between organic, conventional, and certified farm is the management. So the carbon farming is something like that. Regenerative agriculture is based on carbon economy or C-cycle. So if you understand all the actions that you can do in the farms and the coffee crop allows, so you finish convince yourself that is a very strategic crop to the sequester or sink CO2. We've been research a lot about the high rate coffee model productions here in Costa Rica. We have a public partner agreement with the University of Costa Rica that we are trying to measure, and we want to have 5 years data from the field. So 2 years, in 2 years we are going to have that set of data to present to, I don't know, to the market or to the clients or whatever, to the industry. Okay. Because we are with instruments and real-time measurement, we are realize that is very important, the coffee with the carbon sequestration. Mm-hmm.
And do you think this will help to involve more the young generation and help to tackle social crisis in the country?
I guess this is we need to change we need to change the business model, because we really want to share the carbon footprint of every step of the value chain, and the origin or the farms are the only steps with the ability to sequester. So this is like a new model of business model that we can sync and trying to net zero the rest of the emissions of the chain. So this is like the farms are going to produce coffee, but also produce services like this. Yeah.
Maybe we can jump into Danny now, because we were talking a lot about remittances, and so what's your insight? Do you think it could be also something to tackle this endless growth in remittances in Honduras, or?
Remittance, it's a complex story. It has to do, it's a regional problem. It has to do with the situation in the USA. It's out there. We don't know, to say like this. I just don't know. We just hope that prices will hold on. Prices will be good. It is profitable for any coffee producer to produce coffee last year and this year. So if it stays like that, this will obviously help the situation, the flow of migration to start to end. Nobody wants to leave his country. Everybody wants to stay here. And if coffee provides a good and profitable way of living, then this will help a lot to start the migration.
Okay.
Thank you. Thibaut, you showed some slide about La Nina and the probability that it's there for the coming months. So what could be the impact on Colombian coffee production? Could it potentially even go below 12 million bags? Thibaut?
Yeah, sorry. I think Andres might answer in regards to Colombia. I think well, these 12 million bags is I wouldn't say it's optimistic. We've heard that there is people out there in the market who are already closer to 11.5. So I say it's well possible. I mean, when we look at let's say long-term weather forecasts, it looks like what's in the cards is not for dry weather. So indeed, we can face again too much rainfalls, which can first be a problem for the current May crop harvest, let's say, and then again reduce Mitaka potential. Now let's cool our head a bit and let's be a spectator of these weather. I think 12 is already low. So yeah, let's it's everything is possible, I would say.
Thank you, Thibaut. Andres, some final closing words to this topic from you?
Sure. Well, I think, yeah, similar to Thibaut, I think 12 million is low. But yeah, we can see a lower number. Let's see to these flowerings periods during the next weeks, and yeah, I think we should wait. So it's as I mentioned during the presentation, weather is very hard to forecast. Despite we're expecting to see, or we have a La Nina probability going down. So I think Colombia production should be around 12 million, maybe less. So.
Thank you. And thank you all. We're at the end of the webinar. So we would like to thank our speakers for the insights, but also for all of you attending. In case you have questions left, feel free to reach out to us. The recording will be shared via LinkedIn and YouTube. And of course, we hope to see you all at the Swiss Coffee Trade Association Coffee Forum in Geneva on October 13th and 14th. Join our Generation Restoration panel discussion on the 13th, or join the Next Gen Origins Women Leaders panel discussion on 14th, and enjoy a cup of coffee at the Next Gen Coffee Corner. More information will be shared in the coming weeks. And once again, thank you all and wish you a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.